Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing great and wonderful tonight. As usual, this is a daily live broadcast to address key challenges that you have, whether you are an English teacher or an English student. Now, last night we talked about lesson planning and the key features of becoming a successful teacher. Key number one is to focus on your fluency of students and your fluency and do this sustainable effort to become active learner. We're always seeking for knowledge from these sources and from building that on our experiences as English teachers. Some people pretend that they do have experience, but in fact, they just have one experience repeated 30 or 40 times over the years of their life. So if they say, well, I've been teaching for 30 years, probably that is not considerably influential amount of experience because they've probably been teaching the same thing again and again and again and again and again. So that is not considerable and tantamount to the point that can be considered as experience. Now, in our last meeting that we talked yesterday, we talked about fluency, accuracy, authenticity, and practicality or appropriacy of the selection of materials. Tonight, I need to talk about lesson planning because it's probably the most common misunderstood part of the English lesson. And it is misunderstood because lots of people try to crank as much as possible within the 40 minutes or 1 hour of their lesson. And that is really challenging. Lots of people fail by the end of the lesson because they multitask. They want to deliver the set of objectives and the set of goals of the syllabus and the curriculum all together in one lesson. We know that in extreme conditions, like the conditions of teaching crowds of people shuffled in the classroom with different levels, that is really challenging. But ideally, when we talk about our goals of the lesson and our objectives of the lesson and the content and materials of the lesson, they are really misunderstood. The goal is the general purpose of teaching them. For example, when we talk about our goals of teaching English, we want to help students communicate about personal and intrapersonal topics from their daily life. That is the goal of our lesson. In general, that leads us to the goal of the whole curriculum that we are developing. Objectives are related to the lesson planning. When we talk about objectives of certain lesson, we talk about having students be able to communicate about a particular topic for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, listen to 3 minutes, read and memorize a certain number of vocabulary. That will ultimately help them produce the same recycled amount of vocabulary again and again in the lesson. So part of the challenge of lesson planning is actually multitasking. So what I want to recommend to you, just to get this lesson's objective done, do focus on only one thing at a time. So every lesson, you open the door, you enter the classroom, you only have one thing in mind. Now I know sometimes things come on the side road and you need to pull over and address them, but you need to keep an eye on the major element of your success as a language teacher. And that success comes from focusing on one pertinent, outstanding element of the classroom. So if you're going to teach them about present simple or passive voice or present progressive, you need to only focus on that part and bombard them with lots of practice and just minimize the amount of lecturing that you do and maximize the amount of engagement among the students and with you. You need to take notes constantly while you're rotating around the tables of the students. listen to them carefully, but don't give the direct feedback. You can give asynchronous, delayed feedback, or you can take notes and then the next day you address the thing that you listened to and it just popped up during the lesson. That is more important because people have self-esteem and self-confidence, and that might be under the influence of the dictatorship of certain teachers who dominate and think that they are the source of knowledge. We are not the source of knowledge, as we are mentioning that, and I mentioned that yesterday. The teacher is just a connecting joint between language, the authentic kind of language, and the students. So they need to keep that in mind. Whatever they deliver in the classroom, it is just as a channel or a dongle that connects language with students. And you need to maximize the amount of context provision. So if you're talking about restaurants, try to simulate that by bringing technology-based kind of sources, whether as a form of PowerPoint, which is accessible to lots of teachers on school laptops, and reduce the amount of schooling to students. Albert Einstein says, do not let schooling interfere with your education, or do not let education interfere with your learning. And I think he had a vision that sometimes they interfere. When you try to get educated at a certain point and try to get that thing you learn, sometimes that's interfere. And that interference is just on the expense of the profitability of students and the learnability of the lesson that you're trying to deliver to them. Again, I will reiterate the most important element of our lesson of today. When you go to classroom, keep one simple idea in your mind and try to focus on that idea and fix it if it is necessary to be fixed. In lots of occasions, actually, we go through some sort of topics that are not necessary because the students have already passed through, but because of academic stipulations and conditions and requirements, we go through the list of things that we need to do through the week. Some people divide the syllabi into listening, speaking, reading, and writing, vocabulary, and grammar. There is certain validity to some extent on that particular part, but to be honest, language is homogeneous item. It's homogeneous organism, and dissecting it and trying to divide it sometimes does not work properly. So unless you have really professional kind of experience to dissect language and isolate listening from reading from writing, the whole lesson planning is going to collapse. So keep that in mind, and you need to be very wary of it. Additionally, there is the point of self-preparedness. Teachers need to have some professional development constantly. Just because you teach a lesson every day for 3 or 4 years does not make you professional in your field. We know that you get exposure to lots of students, but you need to keep an eye on the progression of technology, of the advances that we do have in the field of education. Every day, new things, new articles, new publications, and new research is published. So you need to keep yourself updated. You need to keep yourself up to the point of the new technology and the new updates within your field. And again, if you're teaching something for 3 or 4 years and you're repeatedly teaching that thing, ask yourself, am I progressing or am I maintaining what I'm teaching? Because there is a big difference out there between maintaining your position and teaching it and progressing in your field. When we go back to the design of lesson plans, again, we have goals, we have objectives, and we have topics and materials. Topics and materials are whatever you see in the pages of the textbook that you're teaching. But within that part, you need to keep an eye on adding supplementary materials. Supplementary materials are like multivitamins to the nutrition that you get as protein, carbohydrates, and vegetables and whatever you eat. You need to supplement that with multivitamins because that is going to maximize the amount of profitability and advantage to students. Don't be afraid of having students get exhausted of practice, because ultimately that is the only benefit. If we rewind and go back to our schools, we can remember that the only thing that just worked with our English was the thing that we really exerted some effort in. So keep that in mind. Have them struggle. They are young, they have energy, and they can do it. And because they can do it, it's presumably okay to push them and enforce some sort of mechanical training as rotation wheels, where they rotate and express what they practiced on what you taught them in the classroom. So if you say, for example, today we are going to learn 10 words, and that can be manifested through their practice. They can rotate and say these words within incorporated with certain sentences that you have them ask each one of the students again and again and again, and they rotate. So if we have 12 students, each one of them will get in contact with 11. So they will repeat the same piece of information again. And that is really good mechanical linguistic practice to their mouths and their articulation organs, because that is going to enable them to become better English speakers. Focus more on, if you have difficulty with certain letters in English, I recommend you focus more on sounds. Particularly, you need to focus more on tongue twisters. Tongue twisters are amazing, like Shelley sells seashells on the seashore. Have them repeated like 100 times. They are young, they can do it, and they will remember it for the rest of their lives. So keep that in mind. Tongue twisters are really good if you have challenge. Some people suggest songs and music. Well, that's kind of energetic for 2 to 3 minutes, but there is not high linguistic value of focusing on songs. I mean, yeah, we can learn some words, romantic ones particularly, but that does not mean that the kind of linguistic input that we get from songs is applicable in daily life. We need to focus on interactional grammar. We need to focus on interactional vocabulary. We need to focus on the most common 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 common words in English. These are the ones with high assets and with high value in our learning of the beautiful English language. So just keep that in mind. And this is just a daily reminder of what you need to do. And actually, by just listening to me right now, you're practicing active listening. So if you have any questions, please share that with me in the comment section. I'm reading through the list of messages that you're sending to me here, and I will definitely stay in touch with you and wish you a lovely evening. مدرب اللغة وليد خالد, and stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you in another video, inshallah. ربي يحفظكم.